All right, everyone, great to have you here. Our April webinar and a little bit of information about what's been going on. You might have noticed it's been windier this month. Climatologically, that's what typically happens in April in Arizona. The atmosphere is transitioning from winter weather to summer weather, and wind helps with that. Wind is caused by differences in pressure, and what everyone should know is that winds are named for the direction that they're coming from. The tools that you're looking at on this slide are called wind roses, and they're pointing to the direction that the winds are coming from. So you can see Flagstaff and Kingman right there in the middle, and it's easy to see that the winds are mostly coming from the southwest in April. March was a cooler month, which is helpful for Arizona's water supply. The usual melting time in Arizona starts around March 1st. So cooler temperatures actually delayed some of the snowmelt in the higher basins. Cooler temperatures also mean that some of the basins receive precipitation in the form of snow instead of rain. Apache, Navajo, Greenlee counties, they had enough precipitation to reach their top 10 rankings for March precipitation this year. Yuma and Cochise counties were a bit drier in March. All right, so sun shower, that's the term of the month. It's a term more often used in the Pacific Northwest or in the South. I never even heard it as a kid in Arizona, but I think we should introduce it. While it's not in the American Meteorological Society glossary, it is used colloquially, and it refers to rain coming down when the sun is shining. Here's an example of that. And with that sun shining a bit more, we're transitioning to our warmer temperatures now, which is actually just a bit delayed from the usual start dates. Phoenix and Tucson both reached the 90s on April 11th this year, which is roughly about 2 weeks later than usual. Phoenix had 94 degrees on April 11th, and Tucson hit 90 degrees on the same date. Phoenix usually reaches 100 degrees on the first part of May, and Tucson usually reaches 100 degrees kind of middle May. Last year, Phoenix hit its first 100 degrees on April 30th, and that was 102 degrees. Hopefully you were able to check out the solar eclipse on April 8th. Arizona was outside the path of totality, but we still experienced about 70% of the sun being blocked by the moon. We can actually measure sunlight down here on the ground, and we saw temperatures in Tempe drop about 2 degrees Fahrenheit during the peak eclipse here in Tempe. So now we're halfway through water year 2024, and it's actually looking a bit better than we were this past October through December. October to December, as well as February this year, were much warmer, but January and March were cooler, so we're welcoming that. And that allowed the state to move from actually the 7th hottest to now only the 10th hottest October to March. And that's going back 130 years. Right now, statewide precipitation is just a few hundredths of an inch above average for the water year, which we will always take. Last year, 6 months into water year 2023, we were ranked as the 22nd wettest and 25th coldest October to March on record, which helped keep water year 2023 kind of just above average with precipitation and temperature. And so now looking here at short-term drought, it's improved from January, but you can see there's more coverage this year than last April. Last year, we saw a lot of smaller grass-type wildfires, and unfortunately, well, actually, fortunately, no exceptionally large wildfires. I'd like to invite everyone to our May webinar because our guest speaker will be Tiffany Davia. She's the Public Affairs Officer for the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management. I think that will be a good discussion next month. We're still seeing long-term drought continue across the state, especially in Maricopa County and parts of southeastern Coconino County. These impacts are really from the hot and dry conditions that have happened over the past 5 years, and it also includes the exceptionally hot and dry July last year. Now, it's good to see that the short-term outlooks are showing hopefully cooler and wetter conditions for the state at the end of this month. Troughing is expected to come back to the western part of the country, and that might bring in some wetter systems. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But now it's good to see sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific kind of cooling down, and that signals a possible transition to La Nina this summer. Global temperatures are always hotter during El Nino events. You may recall that we've had a triple dip La Nina in the winters of, what was that, 21, 22, and 23. So we'll have to wait and see what another La Nina might mean to Arizona. If you're interested in learning more about weather and weather instruments, we need volunteers. Our weather station's in Tempe, and you'll be trained how to take weather observations such as precipitation and evaporation. Then you'll come once a week after we train you around 5 p.m. and you'll take those daily observations. It usually takes you about 15 minutes to do those observations. Those observations then are reported to the National Weather Service. You'll be able to see those online, share them with your friends, and then these will actually feed into National Climate Records. So if you're interested, please email me. We could use your help. Thank you so much. All right, so that's the month summary so far. Our next speaker runs one of the most active and essential weather stations in Arizona. It's called the Arizona Meteorological Network, or AZMET. Jeremy Weiss is the AZMET program manager. And as the state climatologist, I'm especially grateful for his work. So I'm going to stop share and we're going to let Jeremy share his slides and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Erin Ann. Certainly appreciate being here this month. And good morning to everyone who is on the webinar right now. If you haven't heard of AZMET, the really short description is that it's a weather station network that's been in operation for over 30 years now. And not only collecting data, but providing that data as well as related information products. And the typical station in our network looks like this one here that you see on the screen. This is the station down in San Simon, far southeast corner of the state. And the data it collects, as you can see from the background of the picture here, is in support of some pecan orchards in the area. I've been program manager with AZMET for about 2.5 years now, so still relatively new, still learning a lot about the network. And over that time, in addition to keeping things operational, what we've been working on is a really large modernization and refurbishment of the network, basically from head to toe. And I'm going to go into some of the details on both of those things, both the operations and our current resources, as well as some of the new things that we've been rolling out and that we will be rolling out in the near future. So the first thing to get to is that we have a new website, and you can see the URL there. Very easy to remember, azmet.arizona.edu. We launched this at the beginning of March. And the goal of the website is not just a digital billboard. It's not just to put a modern web wrapper or a facade around the legacy website, but to take the functionality of the website and improve upon that and really make this a working website. Working not in the sense of just being functional as you bring it up in a web browser, but working in the sense that AZMET staff are going to be using resources on the website in the day-to-day operations, but also, and more importantly, stakeholders who use this information are going to have quicker access to the information they're looking for. That's going to help them make the decisions that they are looking to make. The website to date, the new one, what we've been able to do is repackage and reorganize a lot of what was on the legacy website. Not everything, as I'll get to in a couple of minutes. And going forward, we're going to finish bringing over the legacy website information, as well as evolve the site to include new information and features. So currently with AZMET, we have 30 stations across the southern, central, and western parts of the state. And a lot of these have been in place, some of them since the late 1980s. Vast majority of them in agricultural areas. There are a handful of stations that are in urban areas, however, the 3 in the Phoenix area, for example, as well as the 1 in Payson. And instead of supporting agricultural weather information, those are supporting water use information in city parks, golf courses, turf water use, largely in those instances. At almost all these stations, we're measuring the full suite of air and soil temperatures at 2 different depths, humidity, wind direction and speed, precipitation, as well as solar radiation. In addition to the measurements we're taking at each of these individual stations, there are a lot of derivative products or variables, if you will, that we also provide, including chill hours, estimates of cotton heat stress, dew point, evapotranspiration, heat units, and vapor pressure. Based on both the measured and derived variables, we also have been, again, historically, providing information on cotton growth stages, that being based on heat units, as well as crop and turf water use, those being based off of the evapotranspiration estimates that we provide. I put wine grape ripening conditions here with an asterisk, just as an example of some of the new information products that we're working on. That particular bit of information is not on the AZMET website, as the others are. However, it is in a monthly climate viticulture newsletter that I write. And those data really are coming from the Wilcox Bench Station, as you can see there in north central Cochise County in the southeastern part of the state. So from these stations, we have real-time observations that are updated every 15 minutes. We run a database of both the hourly and daily values of both the measured and calculated variables, and various daily, monthly summaries and reports also are available. All those are available either on the new AZMET website or through the new AZMET website. And again, I'll explain the difference here in just a moment with some of those products. Data QA/QC is really important with AZMET. And in terms of the quality assurance and quality control, right? So in terms of the quality assurance part of things, each quarter we are visiting the stations and individually and comparing the sensors that are out in the field with a mobile unit of calibrated sensors. 4 to 5 times a year, we additionally are having clean and inspect visits at each of the stations, particularly in the intensive agricultural areas in the western part of the state. Things can get pretty dusty, pretty dirty in short order. Clean sensors, they work better and they last longer. We're trying to go for both of those goals. In addition to that, we also have a preventative replacement program for some of the sensors, swapping them out before they fail or before they fall out of range in terms of their measurements, as well as upgrades of various sensors and equipment. In terms of the data quality and access, various times a week, we are looking at the data coming in manually, but we also have automated checks for both data validity, station communications and power, as well as faulty sensors. And the idea here is to catch bad data or bad sensors or non-communicating stations as quickly as possible and to remedy that situation. One of the first things that we were able to do when I started working with AZMET was set up and put in operation a new secure data system, basically from head to toe, from the collection, processing, storage, and backup of the data, as well as the access to the data. And some of the new features of this do include an API, or an application programming interface, which allow for a lot quicker, a lot more efficient access to the data, both for us in terms of building information products, but also for those of you who might be looking at accessing the data yourself. To support that, we also recently developed an R package, if you're familiar with that programming and analysis environment. that really makes efficient use of the AZMET API. That is available on the AZMET GitHub website. Another thing we did early on was increase, and because of the new data system, was that we were able to increase the frequency of data collection from the individual stations. That allowed us to join the National Mesonet program, which has been a really important source of support and various resources for our network. We're also adding some new automated quality checks for the data coming in from the stations and into the database. The general thought there is that data QA, QC never stops improving. You're always looking to take a step forward in that space. And that's what we've been doing as well with the new data system in place and with some of the programming tools that we've since built. Not all of our improvements to the network have been on the digital side of things or on the online side of things. We've also been doing a lot in the field. And one of those things was to improve the communications between the stations and the digital environment from which we're calling the stations and bringing the data in. We run for communications off of cellular networks. And so we've recently done a cellular signal tower surveys, as well as antenna upgrades. We're trying to have the uptime of these stations to be as high as possible. About a year ago, we began measurements of 2-minute sustained wind speeds at all of the network stations. If you're familiar with air quality in terms of particulate matter, that variable can be very important in that context. And more recently in the field, we have begun a preventative replacement program for rain gauges. So adding our rain gauges to that list of sensors that we are pulling out of the field and recalibrating and cleaning up before they fall out of spec. So some of the things we're working on or will be working on in the near future, we're going to be finishing standardizing these stations. And that's everything from communications to data logger programs to all the sensors. That's going to make our life easier in terms of troubleshooting problems, as well as maintaining stations. If we're saving time there, that allows us to do other things to help advance the network in some of these modernization and refurbishment activities that I've been describing. One of the big steps that we're going to be doing in terms of AZMET Online is modernizing the real-time data system and the related online resources. Right now, if you go into the new website and bring up the current conditions, that will link to the legacy real-time data system. We're going to be bringing that into the modern interface and modern data collection system in the coming weeks and months. Some smaller steps that we'll be taking, we'll be building some additional tools that are going to allow us to do a better job checking on data quality, as well as station communications and power. Again, that data QA, QC never stops improving. That bullet item there, bullet point, certainly falls within that domain. And we'll also be developing some additional online resources for station level data, data tools, and related information. An example there being station averages. Again, some of these stations go back to the late 80s. Some of our youngest ones are only a couple years old, maybe 10 years old. And so we will be developing some station level averages for those stations. So AZMET proper really only has 2 employees. And my better half is Scott White, and he is in charge of all of the field operations. And we are lucky to have him. He does a wonderful job and brings a wealth of experience from, I want to say, at least a decade or 2 of running research equipment in the field. And he's been doing a lot of work getting our stations to, at their best operational potential and make sure they're on, their best behavior in terms of delivering the data back to the digital part of our operations. All 3 of Craig, Matt, and Eric, they work with the communications and cyber technologies group, which is part of the campus that includes veterinary sciences, agriculture, life sciences, as well as cooperative extension, which is where AZMET is located. And we really consider them part of the extended AZMET team. And what we have been able to do is carve out some of their time to help us with the modernization efforts that we've been working on lately and that we will be working on in the near future. Craig's done a lot with developing or designing and developing the new AZMET website. Matt is the knowledge behind rebuilding our entire data system and helping plumb that data system into the new website such that when you go there looking for information products, we're able to bring in the latest data to the web phase, to the web page. And then Eric, in the programming space, he's really helped, developing the R package that allows us to leverage the API with the new data system. And that's been allow us to build a lot of new QA, QC automated tools, as well as some of the other information tools, data tools that we have built that are available through the new website and that we will be building in the future. And that's all I have. I'll leave you with a picture here of our Yuma North Gila station. And if you're seeing lettuce in the fields in Yuma, you know it's not summertime. So you can at least get a good idea as far as what time of year we took this picture. So thanks again. And Erin Ann, I'll turn it back over to you. I'll be happy to answer any questions or any comments or feedback.
I'm so grateful for your time, Jeremy. That was amazing. And we do have a question from chat, and this is from Peter. Peter, you're USDA, right? Rangeland manager in the Four Corners region, right in through there. Has a question for you. Let's see if I can get that back up here. All right. Plans to place AZMET stations in northern Arizona to include the Navajo Reservation.
It's a good question, Peter, and certainly one looks at the map and sees that, yes, historically the AZMET stations have been concentrated across the southern, central, and western parts of the state. Working as we have over the past couple of years, we've gotten AZMET to a point where, network expansion is in conversation. And without getting into the details and logistics of having new stations, having new locations, new local cooperators, costs involved there, we are looking to expand the network. And a lot of that isn't, Erin Ann and I were talking about this before the webinar, isn't going to be coverage for the sake of coverage, but that we're really going to, I think at this point, my thinking is be directing the expansion of the network to tie in to help work on particular problems. And given the nature of what we do, the nature of our stations, what we measure, for example, evapotranspiration estimates, those play a big role in estimating water use, turf water use in urban areas, crop water use in agricultural areas. And so in terms of expansion, I think the locations with AZMET stations that are added to the network really are going to be tied to locations in the state where those problems, not that those problems exist, but those types of issues are certainly, at the forefront. Other agricultural areas in the state, for example. In terms of getting just better coverage of basic conditions, temperature, precipitation, wind, those types of things, certainly one doesn't need the setup that we have with AZMET stations, as you saw in those first and last slides in those pictures. You can get away with a lot less and get the data you need. And so, there's that question too. But, to wrap that up, yes, AZMET is thinking about adding stations to the network. Exactly where yet, that'll be worked out in time.
Thank you so much. I have a question for you. First of all, I love the new site. I think that's amazing. Did I hear you correctly? There's a monthly newsletter that you send out?
Yes, and it actually is a carryover from my previous position with Cooperative Extension. It's a climate and viticulture newsletter, and I've been writing it since about this time yeah, about May 2019, I think was our first issue. I hope it's gotten better over that time. And yeah, please contact me if you'd like to subscribe to that. I'd be happy to add you to that. What we really do is try to look at some of the timely issues that are relevant to wine grape growing in the state. And often we focus on, broad overview of the state, in terms of recent conditions, outlooks for the coming month. But then we drill in a little bit and focus on the 3 state American viticultural areas, or AVAs. There's one in the Wilcox area, the Wilcox AVA, the Sonoyta AVA, and then a relatively new one up in the Verde Valley. And then our AZMET stations, we have 2 in the Wilcox AVA. We get into the details there on some, again, seasonally timely topics. In terms of the example I gave in the slides for wine grape ripening conditions, that's a summertime thing, right? So we're looking at July, August, and into September largely. That's relevant then. Recently have been looking at some of the chill and heat accumulation over the dormant season, which is at its end for wine grapes in the state. And that has been in the context of bud break. So just a couple examples of what the information is we put in there. And again, please contact me if you'd like to subscribe.
Fascinating. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording and